The fluorescent lights of Heritage Financial hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow across the polished marble floor. I've always hated banks. The forced smiles, the pristine counters that somehow make you feel like you're the one who's dirty. But on that Wednesday morning in Denver, with snowflakes melting on my wool coat, I wasn't just uncomfortable. I was terrified. Just sign, Mother. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My daughter Amanda's voice was honeyed for the benefit of anyone who might be listening, but I'd learned to recognize that edge, the one that said she was losing patience. At 69, I'd become well acquainted with that tone. It preceded accusations of senility, of being difficult, of not loving my granddaughter enough. I stared at the stack of inheritance papers she'd pushed toward me. 46 years of sacrifice stared back. Every double shift at the hospital cafeteria. Every skipped vacation. Every penny my Harold and I had saved before cancer took him 3 years ago. All of it, distilled into black ink on white paper. Mom? Amanda leaned closer, her designer perfume suffocating me. Travis and I just want what's best for you. Living alone isn't safe anymore. We've discussed this. Travis, my son-in-law of 10 years, pressed his hand over mine. His grip tightened until I winced, the gold of his wedding band digging into my skin. His smile remained plastered for the security cameras, but his whisper was ice. You're not walking out of here until it's done. I glanced around the bank, hoping someone would notice my distress. A young couple laughed as they discussed mortgage options. A businessman barked into his cell phone. A mother tried to quiet her toddler with a lollipop. No one saw the elderly woman being robbed in broad daylight by her own flesh and blood. I need more time to think. My voice trembled, betraying the fear I was trying to hide. What's there to think about? Travis's fingers squeezed harder. It's $30,000, the last of your savings. But with Sophia's medical bills and our mortgage underwater, you know how much we're struggling. What he didn't mention was the new SUV in their driveway, or Amanda's monthly spa weekends, or the gambling debts I'd already covered twice before. Your granddaughter needs braces, Mom. Amanda's voice cracked with manufactured emotion. Do you want Sophia to grow up being bullied because her grandmother was too selfish to help? The mention of my 8-year-old granddaughter made my heart ache. Sophia, with her gap-toothed smile and endless questions about the world, was the light of my life, the only pure thing in this mess. They'd been using her as leverage for years, knowing I couldn't bear to disappoint her. Mrs. Carter? A middle-aged man in a tailored suit approached our table. I'm Howard Green, the branch manager. Is everything all right here? Travis's grip instantly loosened. Amanda's smile widened. Everything's wonderful, Mr. Green, she chirped. Mom's just finalizing some family arrangements. Aren't we, Mom? Mr. Green looked at me expectantly. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed brighter, harsher. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. $30,000. The last cushion between me and poverty. The final remnant of a lifetime with Harold. Mrs. Carter? Mr. Green prompted again. Is there anything you need? I saw Amanda's smile tighten at the corners. I saw Travis's hand inch closer to mine again. I saw my future vanishing into their greedy hands, all in the name of family obligation. And something inside me, something small and nearly forgotten, flickered to life. Actually, I whispered, could I have a pen and paper? Mr. Green nodded, retrieving a notepad and pen from a nearby desk. Travis and Amanda exchanged glances, their confidence unwavering. After all, what could an old woman possibly do? I bent my head and began writing, my arthritics, fingers shaking so badly I could barely form the letters. When I finished, I folded the paper carefully, my eyes never leaving my daughter's face. I just need to ask the teller a question about the account, I said, rising slowly from my seat. I'll be right back. Mom? Amanda began, but I was already shuffling toward the counter, clutching my purse like a shield. The young woman behind the counter smiled pleasantly. How can I help you today, ma'am? I glanced back once. Travis was watching me like a hawk, ready to pounce if I deviated from the script. Amanda was thumbing through the papers, already planning how they'd spend my life savings. With trembling hands, I slid the folded note across the counter. Please, I whispered. The teller opened the note. 5 words in shaky. Handwriting stared back at her. Help, I'm being coerced. Her eyes widened. She looked from the note to my face, then back again. Without a word, she stepped back and pressed a button beneath her counter. Seconds later, Mr. Green's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly as he approached our table again. Mrs. Carter, he said with deliberate calm, would you mind stepping into my office for a moment? We need to verify some information for the transfer. The relief that flooded through me was so profound I nearly collapsed. Of course, I managed. I'll come with her, Amanda said immediately, standing. That won't be necessary, Mr. Green replied smoothly. Bank policy for accounts over a certain amount. Privacy protocols. As he led me toward his office, I heard Travis's chair scrape against the floor. This is ridiculous, he hissed to Amanda. She's going to ruin everything. Mr. Green closed his office door behind us, blocking out their angry whispers. The silence that followed was like cool water on a burn. Mrs. Carter, he said quietly, I need you to be completely honest with me. Are you being forced to sign these documents against your will? For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words were there, trapped behind decades of putting everyone else first, of saying yes when I meant no, of believing that a mother's love meant emptying herself until nothing remained. Then I looked down at my hand, at the red marks where Travis's fingers had dug into my skin, and something broke open inside me. Yes, I whispered, and then more. Firmly, yes. They want everything I have left, and they won't let me leave until I give it to them. Mr. Green nodded once, picked up his phone, and said 6 words that would change everything. Security, please come to my office. When did my daughter become a stranger to me? That's the question that haunted me as I sat in Mr. Green's office, watching security guards position themselves strategically around Amanda and Travis in the lobby, their faces twisted with rage when they realized what was happening, but the cameras and witnesses kept them in check. Take your time, Mrs. Carter, Mr. Green said kindly, pouring me a cup of water. The police will be here soon to take your statement. Police? The word sent a wave of panic through me. But they're my family, my daughter. Financial coercion is abuse, Mrs. Carter, especially when physical intimidation is involved. He gestured to my wrist, where bruises were already forming in the shape of Travis's fingers. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the office. It wasn't always like this, I said quietly. And it wasn't. I closed my eyes, remembering the little girl with pigtails who used to climb into my lap with storybooks. The teenager who'd hugged me fiercely after getting accepted to that private university I'd worked double shifts to afford. When had that daughter disappeared? May I ask how long this has been going on? Mr. Green's voice was gentle, free of judgment. The question opened a floodgate. Before I knew it, I was telling him everything, the words spilling out like water from a broken dam. I told him about the $50,000 wedding I'd taken loans for because Amanda deserved her dream day, about selling my grandmother's heirloom jewelry to pay for summer camps and programs she'd begged for, about covering Travis's gambling debts when he lost his job unfairly, another $20,000 gone with promises they'd pay me back. After Harold died, they started coming around more, I explained, twisting my wedding ring, the one thing I'd refused to sell. At first, it seemed like they were checking on me, making sure I was coping, but then the requests started. A new car, house renovations, ballet lessons for Sophia. Your granddaughter? I nodded, a small smile breaking through despite everything. She's 8, the sweetest little thing you've ever seen, and they use her against me. My voice cracked. Every favor is framed as being for her. Grandma, can you help so I don't miss class? How could I say no to that? Mr. Green passed me a tissue. And your savings? The inheritance they want you to sign over today? It's all I have left. $30,000. The last of what Harold and I saved over 46 years of, marriage. I twisted the tissue between my fingers. They told me they needed it for Sophia's braces, but last week I overheard Travis talking about a vacation home in Aspen. The realization had hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just taking advantage. They were lying to do it. When I confronted Amanda, she said I was being selfish, that after everything they'd done for me, the least I could do was help them now. I stared at my hands, weathered by decades of work. But the truth is, they've never done anything for me. Not really. It's always been me giving, them taking. And today? What made today different? Mr. Green asked. I thought about the moment when everything shifted, when the balance finally tipped beyond what I could bear. Last night, Sophia called me. She was crying because Amanda had told her they couldn't afford her school trip to the science museum. $5, that's all it cost. But they told her they were broke. I looked up, anger finally breaking through the hurt. $5 when they drive matching SUVs and Amanda gets her nails done weekly. They were teaching my granddaughter that manipulation works. A knock on the door interrupted us. A police officer entered, notepad in hand. Mrs. Carter, I'm Officer Bennett. I understand you're reporting financial coercion. I hesitated, years of conditioning making me want to backpedal, to protect Amanda despite everything. What kind of mother turns her child into the police? But then I thought of Sophia, of the lesson I'd be teaching her if I let this continue. That love means letting people take advantage of you. That dignity can be bought and sold for the right price. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Yes, I am. As I recounted the story again, I could see Amanda and Travis through the glass wall of Mr. Green's office. They were arguing with security, gesturing wildly at me, their faces contorted with entitlement and rage. They'll never forgive me. For this, I whispered. Officer Bennett followed my gaze. Mrs. Carter, may I speak frankly? I nodded. Based on what you've told me, forgiveness isn't what they're after. People like this don't want relationships. They want resources. He closed his notepad. The question is, what do you want? What did I want? For most of my life, I'd wanted one thing, to be a good mother. I'd equated that with sacrifice, with saying yes when every instinct screamed no, with giving until nothing remained. But as I watched my daughter, a stranger in familiar skin, I realized something profound. Being a good mother also meant teaching the right lessons. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. I want my dignity back, I said finally. I want to stop being afraid. And I want my granddaughter to know that real love doesn't come with price tags or guilt trips. Officer Bennett nodded. Then let's start there. As we walked out of the office to face Amanda and Travis, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not courage exactly, but something quieter. The steady certainty that I was finally doing the right thing. Not just for others, but for myself. And in that moment I knew this was only the beginning. The bank lobby fell silent as Officer Bennett and I emerged from Mr. Green's office. Amanda's eyes locked with mine, green like her father's but lacking his warmth. For a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Not remorse, but calculation. Mom, she called out, her voice suddenly soft and wounded. What are you doing? We're just trying to help you. Travis stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder in a performance of spousal support. The other customers in the bank had stopped their transactions to watch the drama unfold. I felt exposed, vulnerable, a private family tragedy now on display like a television courtroom drama. Mrs. Carter has reported financial coercion, Officer Bennett stated calmly. She will not be signing any documents today. Coercion? Amanda's laugh was brittle. That's ridiculous. We're her family. We're looking out for her best interest because she's clearly not thinking straight anymore. There it was. The familiar insinuation that I was losing my faculties, that my resistance was evidence of mental decline rather than self-preservation. I'd heard it so many times that I'd almost started to believe it myself. Your mother appears perfectly lucid to me, Mr. Green interjected, standing firmly at my side. And the bruises on her wrist tell a compelling story. Travis stepped forward, his attorney's instincts kicking in. Those could have happened anywhere. My mother-in-law is prone to accidents. Aren't you, Evelyn? The use of my first name, so coldly professional, sent a chill through me. This man had eaten at my table for 10 years. I'd helped him study for the bar exam, had babysat his daughter while he built his career. Now I was just Evelyn, an obstacle to be managed. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, they happened right here, Travis. When you squeezed my hand until I couldn't bear the pain. A security guard shifted his stance, moving slightly, closer to Travis. The other customers murmured, and I saw a woman near the deposit slip counter pull out her phone, angling it toward us. Mom, you're embarrassing yourself, Amanda hissed. You've been forgetful lately, confused. Remember last month when you thought someone had broken into your house? It was just the wind knocking over a plant. I remembered. I also remembered that 2 days before that incident, $300 had disappeared from my dresser drawer during their visit. I'm not confused, Amanda. Not anymore. I took a deep breath. I'm not signing over my savings, not today, not ever. Travis's professional facade cracked. You selfish old... That's enough, Officer Bennett cut in. Sir, I suggest you and your wife leave the premises now. Mrs. Carter has made her decision. This isn't over, Amanda spat, gathering her designer handbag. When you're old and alone, don't come crawling to us. Sophia will grow up without a grandmother, and that will be your choice. The mention of my granddaughter nearly broke my resolve. The thought of never seeing Sophia's gap-toothed smile again, never helping her with science projects or reading her stories before bed. It was almost too much to bear. But then I remembered the $5 museum trip, the lesson they were teaching her about manipulation, about family. Sophia deserves better than to be used as a bargaining chip, I said softly. So do I. Something shifted in Amanda's expression then. Surprise, perhaps, that her most reliable weapon had failed. She grabbed Travis's arm and marched toward the exit, pausing only to deliver one final blow. Dad would be ashamed of you. The doors closed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. My legs suddenly felt unable to support my weight. Mr. Green quickly guided me to a chair as spots danced before my eyes. Deep breaths, Mrs. Carter, Officer Bennett advised, crouching beside me. You did well. Very well. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollowed out, as if something essential had been scooped from my chest. I had just severed the most fundamental relationship in my life, that of mother and child. The bank customers were returning to their business, the dramatic entertainment concluded, but I remained frozen in the aftermath of a personal earthquake. What happens now? I asked, my voice small in the vast lobby. Now, we document everything, Officer Bennett replied. The coercion attempt, the physical intimidation, the history of financial exploitation. Colorado has strong elder abuse laws. If you want to pursue charges? The word felt foreign on my tongue. Against my own daughter? Mr. Green spoke gently. Mrs. Carter, sometimes the law is the only boundary that works when personal ones have been repeatedly violated. I stared at my bruised wrist, evidence of how far things had gone. How had we arrived here, my daughter and I? What twisted path had led us from bedtime stories and birthday cakes to police reports and legal threats? I need time, I finally said. I need to think. Officer Bennett nodded. That's understandable. Here's my card. We can file a report. Whenever you're ready. In the meantime, do you have somewhere safe to go? Someone who can stay with you tonight? The question landed like a stone. Who did I have? After Harold died, my world had narrowed to Amanda, Travis, and Sophia. I'd let friendships wither as I poured everything into being available whenever my daughter called. The isolation, I now realized, hadn't been accidental. I'll be fine on my own, I stammered. Mr. Green and Officer Bennett exchanged concerned glances. Mrs. Carter, Mr. Green said carefully, given the confrontation that just occurred, it might be wise to have some support tonight. Is there a friend or relative you could call? I thought of my sister in Phoenix, my neighbor Mrs. Abernathy, the women from my old book club that I'd stopped attending when Amanda started scheduling family emergencies on the same nights. I'd allowed myself to become so isolated that the thought of reaching out now felt like scaling a mountain. I'll call my sister, I said finally. She can come tomorrow, perhaps. As Officer Bennett escorted me to my car, the winter sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I fumbled with my keys, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Mrs. Carter, he said before closing my car door, what you did today took incredible courage. Many people never find the strength to draw that line. I looked up at him, this young man who had witnessed my family's ugliness with professional detachment. It doesn't feel like courage, I admitted. It feels like failure. He shook his head. Standing up for yourself is never failure. Remember that. As I drove home through the familiar streets of Denver, past the elementary school where Amanda had once played kickball, past the ice cream shop where we'd celebrated her graduations, past the church where she'd married Travis, I felt like a tourist in my own life, observing landmarks from a strange new vantage point. When I pulled into my driveway, the modest home Harold and I had shared for 4 decades looked different somehow. Smaller, perhaps. Or maybe I was the one who had grown. I sat in my car for a long moment, key still in the ignition, and allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back in the bank, the grief, the rage, the relief. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't the tears of defeat I'd grown accustomed to. They were something else entirely. They were the tears of a woman who had, at long last, chosen herself. My house felt different that night. Emptier, yet somehow more spacious. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching familiar objects that suddenly seemed new. Harold's reading chair, the quilt my mother had made for our wedding, the wall of family photos that chronicled a happiness I was no longer sure had been real. I paused at a portrait of Amanda on her wedding day, radiant in the gown I'd worked overtime to afford. Her smile was triumphant as she clutched Travis's arm, Had the seeds of today been planted even then? Had I always been just a resource to her, a well to be drained until nothing remained? The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Amanda's name flashed on the caller ID. My hand hovered over the receiver, conditioned to answer immediately. 3 rings, 4, 5. I pulled back, watching it go to voicemail. Her voice filled the room seconds later, each word precision engineered to draw blood. Mom, I can't believe you humiliated us like that. After everything we've done for you. Travis is talking about restraining orders, saying you're unstable. Is that what you want? To never see Sophia again? To die alone in some state facility because you were too stubborn to let family help you? Call me back when you're ready to apologize. The message ended with an electronic beep that seemed to echo in my silent house. I deleted it without a second thought. More calls followed, Travis's number, then Amanda's again, then their home line. I unplugged the phone and sat in Harold's chair, the leather still contoured to his form after 3 years empty. What would you do, Harold? I whispered to the empty room. What would you say if you knew what our little girl had become? I could almost hear his reply in that gentle voice that had guided me through 43 years of marriage. The same thing I always told you, Evelyn. Stand your ground when, you know you're right. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by phantom phone rings and dreams of Sophia calling for me. I woke before dawn, disoriented and hollow. The morning light brought with it a strange clarity. I made coffee, stronger than usual, and carried it to the porch swing Harold had installed the summer before his diagnosis. The neighborhood was quiet, just a few early joggers and people walking dogs. Normal lives unfolding in normal ways while mine had shattered. My cell phone buzzed on the side table. A text from an unknown number. Grandma, it's Sophia. Mom took away my iPad, but I'm using Jenny's phone. Are you okay? Mom and Dad are really mad. My heart clenched. I typed back quickly. I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry about grown-up problems. I love you very much. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Mom says we can't come over anymore. She says you don't want to see me. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Using a child as a weapon, my bright, innocent Sophia caught in the crossfire of adult greed. That's not true, I typed, hands shaking. I will always want to see you. Always. I have to go. Dad's coming. The message thread went silent. I clutched the phone to my chest, grief washing over me anew. They would poison her against me, rewrite the narrative until I became the villain of the story. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my despair. Through the peephole, I saw my sister Margaret, 5 years my junior, hair more salt than pepper now, sensible shoes and a determined expression. Maggie? I opened the door in disbelief. How did you— Officer Bennett called me, she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Why didn't you tell me what was happening, Evie? All these years and you never said a word. I sagged against her, suddenly exhausted. I was ashamed, I admitted. What kind of mother raises a child who turns out like this? What kind of person lets themselves be used for so long? Margaret guided me to the kitchen table, setting down her overnight bag with a resolute thump. A loving mother who couldn't imagine her child would exploit that love, she answered, filling the kettle. And a woman who was taught, like all of us were, that sacrifice equals virtue. She moved around my kitchen with familiar efficiency, finding tea bags and mugs as if she'd never left. In truth, we'd grown apart. After she moved to Phoenix 15 years ago, our calls had become less frequent, our visits limited to major holidays, when Amanda permitted them. They've been isolating you, Margaret said matter-of-factly, setting a steaming mug before me. Classic abuser tactic, I should have seen it sooner. Abuser? The word felt too harsh, too absolute. She's just entitled, spoiled maybe. Evie. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. What Travis did to your wrist was physical abuse. What Amanda has been doing with your money and your emotions is financial and psychological abuse. You need to call it what it is. I stared into my tea, watching ripples form as my hand trembled slightly. But she's my daughter. I raised her. And Harold's daughter, too. Margaret reminded me. Remember how he used to say she had champagne taste on a beer budget? He saw it, Evie. He just didn't live long enough to see how bad it would get. The mention of Harold's assessment hit me like a physical blow. He had worried about Amanda's materialism, her constant reaching for more. I'd dismissed his concerns, defending her as just ambitious, just wanting a better life than we'd had. What do I do now? I asked, the question encompassing everything, the legal implications, the emotional fallout, the empty future stretching before me. Margaret covered my hand with hers. First you rest, then we fight. That afternoon, while Margaret made calls and organized papers at my kitchen table, I found myself in Amanda's old bedroom. It remained largely unchanged since her college days. Pastel walls, debate trophies, photos of friends she'd long since discarded when they couldn't advance her social standing. I opened her closet, running my fingers over the formal dresses I'd scrimped to afford, the designer jeans that had been absolute necessities for fitting in. At the back, dusty and forgotten, sat a cardboard box labeled Mom's Things for Amanda. Inside were the items I'd saved for her over the years. My mother's pearl necklace, the first edition books Harold had collected, photo albums meticulously documenting her childhood, treasures meant to connect her to her history, her family, her roots. None of them had ever interested her. None had been deemed valuable enough to take to her own home. Found something? Margaret asked from the doorway. I closed the box. Gently. Just clarity. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset behind the mountains, my phone rang again. Travis's number. Margaret raised an eyebrow. You don't have to answer that, she said. I took a deep breath. Yes, I do, but this time on my terms. I pressed the speaker button. Hello, Travis. Evelyn. His voice was controlled, lawyerly. We need to discuss yesterday's misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. You and Amanda attempted to coerce me into signing over my savings. You left bruises on my wrist. The bank has security footage, and Officer Bennett has my statement. A pause. Look, things got heated. We all said and did things we regret. But this is family business, not something for police and banks to meddle in. Margaret snorted beside me, but remained silent. Family doesn't hurt family, Travis, I said quietly. Not physically, not financially, not emotionally. So what now? His tone hardened. You're going to press charges against your own daughter? Tear this family apart over a misunderstanding about money? The manipulation was so transparent now that I could see it for what it was. The false dichotomies, the reframing of self-defense as aggression, the leveraging of family bonds to permit abuse. This family, I said slowly, was torn apart long before yesterday. I just didn't want to see it. I ended the call before he could respond, switching my phone to silent mode. Margaret squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, sis. For the first time since the confrontation at the bank, I felt something like peace settle over me. Not happiness, that would take longer to reclaim, but the quiet dignity of having finally spoken my truth. As darkness fell over Denver, I realized I was at the beginning of a journey I never expected to take. Not at 69, not after a lifetime of putting others first. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal and emotional complexities. But for the first time in years, it was my path to choose. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Heritage Financial, I found myself standing in front of a community center in downtown Denver. The brick building was unassuming, nestled between a coffee shop and a bookstore. A simple sign read, Golden Year Support Group, Wednesdays 10 a.m. You don't have to do this. Today, Margaret said beside me, her hand steady on my elbow. She'd extended her stay from Phoenix, postponing work commitments to help me navigate the aftermath. I do, I replied, straightening my shoulders. I can't keep hiding in the house, jumping every time the phone rings. The past weeks had been a crash course in reclaiming my life. I'd changed the locks after Travis had attempted to enter the house while I was grocery shopping. I'd opened a new bank account at a different institution. I'd filed a restraining order after the messages turned threatening. Each step had felt like crossing a minefield, terror mixed with exhilaration. But this, walking into a room full of strangers to admit I'd been a victim, this was the hardest threshold yet. Inside, a circle of folding chairs held about a dozen people, most around my age or older. A woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair approached us immediately. First time? She asked with a warm smile. I'm Patricia, the group facilitator, former social worker, current busybody. Her directness made me smile despite my nerves. Evelyn, I replied. And yes, first time. Well, Evelyn, there's coffee that tastes like motor oil, cookies that taste suspiciously store-bought, despite Hank's claims of baking them himself, and absolutely no pressure to speak until you're ready. I found myself relaxing slightly as Margaret squeezed my hand and left for the coffee shop next door. I took a seat between an elegant woman in her 70s and a gentleman with kind eyes and a worn wedding band. As others shared their stories, financial exploitation by caregivers, emotional manipulation by adult children, physical abuse by spouses. I felt something shift inside me. These weren't weak people. They weren't gullible or stupid. They were survivors who had believed in the inherent goodness of those they loved, only to have that trust weaponized against them. When Patricia gently asked if I wanted to share, I surprised myself by speaking. "My name is Evelyn," I began shakily. "3 weeks ago, my daughter and son-in-law tried to force me to sign over my life savings at the bank. When I refused, my daughter told me I would never see my granddaughter again." The simple act of speaking those words aloud, without shame, without qualification, felt like setting down a burden I'd carried for years. After our meeting, the elegant woman, Rose, she'd introduced herself, approached me. "First meetings are the hardest," she said. 4 years ago, I couldn't even say the word abuse without breaking down. Now I volunteer at the senior center, helping others recognize the signs. "How did you rebuild?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me for weeks. "After losing family, after starting over so." "Late in life?" Rose smiled, lines crinkling around eyes that had seen their share of pain and joy. "One brick at a time, dear. And by realizing that family isn't always blood." She handed me a business card. "Senior art class, Tuesdays and Thursdays. No talent required, just a willingness to make a magnificent mess." On the drive home, Margaret glanced over at me. "How was it?" I stared out the window at the Rocky Mountains in the distance, their ancient peaks unmoved by the dramas unfolding beneath them. It was a beginning. That weekend, Margaret returned to Phoenix with promises to visit monthly. The house felt emptier without her presence, but not as hollow as before. I'd begun filling it with new things. Books from authors I'd always meant to read, plants that brightened, windowsills, a bird feeder outside the kitchen window that attracted finches and chickadees. Small acts of autonomy, choices made for no one's pleasure but my own. On Tuesday, I drove to the senior center and joined Rose's art class. My first attempt at watercolor was objectively terrible. A blob that was meant to be a mountain landscape, but looked more like a melting ice cream sundae. But the act of creation, of allowing myself to be imperfect in public, felt revolutionary. "Magnificent mess indeed," I laughed to Rose as we cleaned brushes afterward. "Evelyn Carter embracing imperfection," she teased. "Next thing you know, you'll be wearing mismatched socks." "Don't push it," I replied, surprising myself with how easily the banter came. That evening, as I watered my new plants, the doorbell rang. My heart stuttered, a conditioned response to unexpected visitors. Through the peephole, I saw Mr. Green, the bank manager, holding a folder. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted me formally when I opened the door. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," I said, though my pulse was racing. "Would you like to come in?" He sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, placing the folder on the coffee table. "We've completed our internal investigation of the incident at Heritage Financial. Given the evidence, the security footage, your statement, the visible bruising, we've filed a formal report with the Elder Protection Services and the Denver Police Department." My stomach clenched. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means that regardless of whether you personally wish to press charges, the bank has an obligation to report attempted financial exploitation." His professional demeanor softened slightly. "Mrs. Carter, I've worked in banking for 30 years. What happened to you happens to seniors every day. Most never find the courage to say no." I stared at the folder, knowing it contained documentation of my family's betrayal. Will they be arrested? That depends on the district attorney's office. But at minimum, there will be a record of the incident. If they attempt something similar in the future, with you or anyone else, there will be consequences. After Mr. Green left, I sat in Harold's chair for a long time, watching darkness fall over the neighborhood. The folder remained unopened on the coffee table, a Pandora's box of legal terminology and official documentation. I thought about Amanda and Travis, about the path they'd chosen, about Sophia, caught in the middle of adult greed and manipulation, about how systems designed to protect the vulnerable were finally, belatedly, working as they should. My phone chimed with a text message. Unknown number. "Grandma, it's me. Using my friend's phone again. Can we talk?" My heart leaped, then settled, into cautious optimism. I'd learned enough in recent weeks to know that Travis and Amanda might be using Sophia's love for me as another manipulation tactic. "I'd love to talk, sweetheart," I replied carefully. "But I need to make sure your parents know we're communicating. I don't want to put you in a difficult position." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then, "They don't. They said you don't want to see me anymore, that you chose money over me." The cruelty of the lie stole my breath. Using a child as a weapon. My bright, innocent Sophia caught in their toxic narrative. That's not true, Sophia. I typed back, hands steady despite the anger coursing through me. I love you very much. I always will. But right now, your parents and I need some space to work through adult problems. Are you mad at them because Dad hurt your arm? I saw the bruise when you were at the bank. My blood ran cold. Sophia had witnessed the coercion, had seen her father physically intimidate me. What other behaviors was she normalizing? What lessons was she learning about how family treats one another? In that moment, something crystallized within me, a purpose beyond my own healing. This wasn't just about protecting my savings or my dignity. It was about breaking a cycle before it claimed another generation. I looked at the folder on my coffee table, then back at my phone. Sophia, I typed, would it be okay if I called your mom's phone to talk to you? I think it's time we all had an honest conversation. It was time to stop hiding. Time to stand in my truth, not just for myself, but for Sophia. Time to show her what courage really looked like. Amanda answered on the first ring, her voice sharp with surprise. Mom, why are you calling? I'd like to speak with Sophia, please, I said calmly, gripping the phone tighter than necessary. Absolutely not. The pretense of sweetness was gone. You've traumatized her enough with your public spectacle at the bank. Travis and I have, decided it's best if she doesn't have contact with you for a while. That's interesting, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Because Sophia just texted me saying you told her I didn't want to see her anymore, that I chose money over her. Silence stretched across the line, followed by muffled sounds, a hand covering the receiver, harsh whispers. You're making that up, Amanda finally said. Sophia's phone has been confiscated. She's resourceful. Gets that from her grandmother. I took a deep breath. Amanda, this needs to stop. The lies, the manipulation, using Sophia as a pawn. It's damaging her. You have no right to tell me how to raise my daughter. The venom in her voice was palpable. You're just a bitter old woman who couldn't bear to help her family when they needed it. Help? I repeated incredulously. Is that what you call intimidation and coercion? Is that what you call the bruises Travis left on my arm? Bruises your daughter saw? More silence. Then, a different kind of tension in her voice. What are you talking about? Sophia was at the bank that day. She saw everything. Is that the example you want to set? That it's acceptable for men to physically intimidate women to get what they want? That family means taking until nothing remains? You're twisting things, Amanda hissed. But I detected a note of uncertainty. Travis would never. He was just guiding your hand to the signature line. The security cameras show differently, I said quietly. So does the police report. So do the photographs of my bruised wrist. Police report? Alarm replaced anger. What police report? The one filed after the incident at Heritage Financial. The one that's currently being reviewed by the district attorney's office for potential charges of elder abuse and attempted financial exploitation. I could almost hear her mental calculations, the potential impact on Travis's legal career, on their standing in the Chao community, on the carefully cultivated image they presented to the world. You wouldn't do that to your own family, she said finally, but the confidence had drained from her voice. I didn't want to, I admitted. I still don't. That's why I'm calling. I'd like to meet you, Travis, and me. No lawyers, no accusations. Just a conversation about how we move forward from here. There's nothing to discuss. You made your choice at the bank. Yes, I did, I agreed. I chose not to let myself be bullied and exploited. But now I'm making another choice, to try to salvage something from this mess, if not for us, then for Sophia. She didn't respond immediately. I could hear her breathing, the slight tremor betraying the crack in her armor. Fine, she said eventually. Tomorrow. Noon. The coffee shop near the park where we used to take Sophia. I'll be there, I promised, ending the call before emotion could overtake me. I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, heart pounding with the audacity of what I'd just done. Part of me had expected to feel triumphant, wielding the threat of legal consequences like a weapon. Instead, I felt hollow. These were the people I loved most in the world, despite everything. The prospect of inflicting legal troubles on them brought me no joy, yet I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. The mask slipping to reveal the cold calculation beneath. I couldn't unfeel Travis's fingers digging into my skin. I couldn't unhear Amanda's threats to keep Sophia from me. Some wounds were too deep for simple forgiveness. Some behaviors too dangerous to enable with silence. The next day dawned clear and cool, the October sun painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. I dressed with deliberate care, not the fussy, accommodating outfits I'd worn for years to please Amanda, but a simple blue sweater that brought out my eyes, comfortable slacks, low heels, clothes that belonged to a woman who valued herself. Margaret called as I was leaving. "Are you sure about this?" she asked when I explained the meeting. "Without a mediator present?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore," I admitted, "but I have to try." The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. A strategic choice on Amanda's part, no doubt. Public enough to prevent a scene, crowded enough that we couldn't speak too honestly. I spotted them at a corner table, heads bent close together in conversation that halted abruptly when they saw me. "Mom," Amanda greeted me coolly, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes even indoors. Travis didn't speak, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack walnuts. The charming attorney persona had vanished, replaced by barely controlled hostility. I sat across from them, declining the coffee Amanda performatively offered. "Thank you both for meeting me. Let's skip the pleasantries," Travis said flatly. "You wanted to talk. So talk." I met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated. "I want to establish some boundaries going forward. First, I won't be providing any more financial support. The money I have left needs to sustain me through retirement." "We're well aware of your financial decisions," Amanda snapped. "Is that why you dragged us here, to gloat?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm here to discuss Sophia. I want regular, scheduled visitation with my granddaughter, every other weekend perhaps, and one evening during the week." Travis barked out a laugh. "You think you're in a position to make demands after filing a police report against us?" "I'm not making demands. I'm proposing a solution that keeps this situation from escalating further." I withdrew an envelope from my purse, sliding it across the table. "This is a copy of the report, along with the bank's internal documentation. Read it, then decide how you want to proceed." Amanda stared at the envelope as if it might bite her. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm being transparent. The report exists. Ignoring it won't make it disappear." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Amanda, Travis, I don't want to see either of you facing legal consequences. I don't want Sophia to watch her parents dragged through a public scandal, but I also won't be erased from her life." Travis reached for the envelope, his attorney's curiosity overriding his anger. As he scanned the contents, his face paled slightly. "Professional?" Instinct told him what personal arrogance had hidden. They were legally vulnerable. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, but the bluster had faded. "It proves enough," I replied quietly. "Enough for an investigation that neither of you wants, especially given Travis's position at the firm." The strategic mention of his career wasn't lost on either of them. Travis's partnership track would be derailed by even the suggestion of elder abuse. Amanda's social standing in their exclusive circle would crumble if word got out. "What exactly are you proposing?" Amanda asked, calculation replacing hostility in her tone. "As I said, regular visitation with Sophia. No supervised visits, no restrictions. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges. The report remains filed but dormant unless there's another incident." Travis and Amanda exchanged glances, the silent communication of co-conspirators weighing options. "And the money?" Travis asked bluntly. "Sophia's braces? Her private school tuition? Those are your responsibilities as parents," I said firmly. "I'm happy to contribute to a college fund for Sophia, directly to the institution when the time comes. But my days of open-ended financial support are over." Amanda removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes so like Harold's it made my heart ache. "Why are you doing this, Mom? Why couldn't you just help us like you always have?" For a moment, I glimpsed the daughter I remembered, confused, perhaps even hurt by my refusal. Then I remembered the cold calculation in those same eyes as she'd pushed inheritance papers toward me, leveraging a lifetime of maternal love for financial gain. "Because I finally realized that helping isn't the same as enabling," I said gently. "And because I love Sophia too much to teach her that love means allowing yourself to be exploited." We left the coffee shop with a tentative agreement. I would see Sophia the following weekend, supervised at first, then independently if all went well. I would not pursue criminal charges. They would not attempt to access my finances again. It wasn't the reconciliation I'd once dreamed of. There were no tearful apologies, no recognition of the pain they'd caused. But it was a beginning. A fragile framework that might, in time, evolve into something healthier. As I walked to my car, autumn leaves crunching beneath my feet. I felt oddly lighter. Not because I'd won some victory over my daughter and son-in-law, but because I'd finally stopped playing a game rigged against me. I'd changed the rules to something I could live with, and in doing so, I'd taken another step on the journey back to myself. 6 months after the confrontation at Heritage Financial, spring arrived in Colorado with its customary drama. Snowstorms one day, warm sunshine the next. The tulips I'd planted in the fall were emerging in bursts of crimson and gold along my walkway. "Grandma, look!" Sophia called from the garden, her face alight with discovery. "The bird made its nest where we put the birdhouse." I joined her beneath the maple tree, where a robin was meticulously arranging twigs in the small wooden house we'd built and painted together last month. These Saturday afternoons had become sacred, time when Sophia and I could reconnect, rebuilding the relationship that had nearly been severed. The first few visits had been strained, with Amanda or Travis sitting stiffly nearby, monitoring every interaction. Gradually, as weeks passed without incident, they'd relaxed their surveillance. Now, Sophia spent every other weekend with me, and Thursday evenings for dinner and homework help. "She'll lay eggs there soon," I explained, watching my granddaughter's eyes widen with wonder. "And in a few weeks, there will be baby birds. Can we watch them grow up?" she asked eagerly. "Yes, but from a distance. We need to respect their space." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Living things need freedom to thrive." At 8, Sophia couldn't fully grasp the metaphorical weight of my words, but she nodded solemnly. "Like how you needed space from Mom and Dad after the bank thing." Her directness still startled me sometimes. Children see more than adults give them credit for, absorbing the emotional undercurrents of family dynamics like sponges. "Something like that," I acknowledged. "Sometimes people who love each other need time apart to remember how to love better." She considered this, her small face serious. "Mom cries sometimes, when she thinks I'm asleep. Dad just gets really quiet and drinks the smelly stuff." My heart constricted. Despite everything, I couldn't take pleasure in their distress. "Grown-ups make mistakes, Sophia. Even parents. Your mom and dad are trying to figure some things out right now. Are they going to get a divorce like Emma's parents?" Her voice was small, vulnerable. "I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, lots of people love you. That won't change." The afternoon light slanted through the trees as we finished planting marigolds along the garden border. When Travis arrived to pick Sophia up, his usual stiff formality was tinged with something new, a weary resignation. The facade of perfect family life was crumbling under the weight of consequences. "She had a good day," I offered as Sophia gathered her backpack. Travis nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "Amanda's moving in with her friend Caroline for a while. We thought Sophia should hear it from both of us together." I absorbed this news with a complex mixture of emotions. "I'm sorry, Travis." He looked startled, as if kindness was the last thing he expected. "Are you?" "Yes," I said simply. "I never wanted your marriage to fail. I just wanted the exploitation to stop." For a moment, the mask slipped, revealing a glimpse of the man Amanda had fallen in love with years ago, before ambition and materialism had hardened him. "I've been seeing someone," he admitted. "A therapist, I mean. He's helping me understand some patterns, things I never saw in myself before." Before I could respond, Sophia bounded back, hugging me fiercely. "Bye, Grandma. See you Thursday." As they drove away, I reflected on Travis's revelation. People could change, sometimes through crisis, sometimes through choice. The outcome of their marriage wasn't my burden to carry, but I found myself hoping that whatever happened would bring growth rather than bitterness. The following week, my support group gathered for our regular Wednesday meeting. I brought a lemon pound cake, Rose contributed her famous snickerdoodles, and Hank stubbornly presented his store-bought cookies with the pride of a master baker. "I have news," I announced during sharing time, heart fluttering with nervous excitement. "I've enrolled in the community college. One class to start. Introduction to Art History." The room erupted in applause and congratulations. "Harold always said you had an eye for art," Margaret commented from beside me. She'd moved back to Denver 2 months ago, taking early retirement to be closer to me. Our relationship had blossomed into the sister friendship we'd never quite managed in our younger years. "He did," I agreed, throat tightening at the memory. "I think he'd be proud." "I know he would be," Margaret said firmly. Later that evening, as we sat on my porch swing watching fireflies emerge in the twilight, Margaret asked the question she'd been dancing around for weeks. "Have you considered selling the house? It's awfully big for one person. I surveyed the home where I'd raised my daughter, loved my husband, and built a life. For so long, it had been my anchor, the physical embodiment of family and obligation. Now it felt more like a museum of memories, both sweet and painful. Actually, I've been thinking about it, I admitted. The stairs are getting harder, and there's that little condo near the park we looked at last month. Margaret smiled. The one with the balcony, garden, and the community center next door? That's the one. I rocked the swing gently. It might be nice to start fresh, somewhere without so many ghosts. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. This house had served its purpose in my life's journey. It had sheltered my family, witnessed both joy and heartache. But perhaps now it was time to release it, to let another family create their own memories within its walls while I crafted a new chapter for myself. The next morning, I called a realtor. Moving was both harder and easier than I'd anticipated. Each item required a decision: keep, donate, discard. Harold's clothes, preserved in plastic for 3 years, went to a veterans organization. Amanda's childhood memorabilia was carefully packed and stored for Sophia someday. Furniture that wouldn't fit in the condo found new homes with grateful young families just starting out. The process was exhausting but strangely liberating, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. "What about this?" Margaret asked one afternoon, holding up the silver-framed family portrait from Amanda's wedding day. All of us smiling in practiced perfection, unaware of the fractures forming beneath the surface. I studied it thoughtfully. "Box it for now. Some memories need time before we can see them clearly." Amanda called when she saw the "for sale" sign in the yard. Her voice was strained but controlled. "You're selling the house? Without telling me?" "I'm downsizing," I explained calmly. "The condo is more manageable and closer to Sophia's school." Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken grief and resentment. Finally, she sighed. "Dad would have hated this, selling his home." "No," I corrected gently. "Your father would have hated seeing me rattling around in a house too big for me, clinging to the past instead of embracing the future. He always said homes were for living, not for preserving like museums." Another silence. Then, unexpectedly, "Can I come see it? The condo, I mean? Before you finalize everything?" The request surprised me. "Of course. I'm painting the spare bedroom lavender. I thought Sophia might like that for her weekend stays." "Lavender?" Amanda repeated, her voice softening slightly. "That was my color when I was her age." "I remember," I said quietly. "We weren't healing exactly. The wounds were too deep, the betrayal too profound for simple reconciliation. But perhaps we were learning to coexist in this new reality, connected by Sophia, bound by history, cautiously navigating a relationship built on clearer boundaries. And for now, that was enough." The condo welcomed me with sunlight streaming through eastern windows and the promise of simpler days. As I arranged my remaining possessions, the ones that truly mattered, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This space was mine alone, chosen with intention rather than inherited through obligation. At 69, I had begun again, not despite my age, but because of it, with the wisdom to recognize what truly mattered and the courage to reach for it with both hands. 1 year to the day after the confrontation at Heritage Financial, I stood before a room full of seniors at the community center, heart pounding in my chest. "My name is Evelyn Carter," I began, voice steadier than I felt, "and I'm here to share my experience with financial exploitation and elder abuse." The workshop had been Rose's idea, a way to help others recognize warning signs I'd missed for years. Mr. Green from the bank sat in the back row, nodding encouragement. Margaret beamed from the front, pride radiating from her like sunlight. "It doesn't always look like a stranger with a scam," I continued. "Sometimes it's the people we love most who take advantage of our generosity. Sometimes the most dangerous exploitation happens slowly, wrapped in the language of family obligation and guilt." As I shared my story, the decades of increasing demands, the isolation, the final confrontation, I saw recognition dawn in many eyes. Heads nodded. A few tears were discreetly wiped away. "The hardest lesson I learned," I concluded, "was that love without respect isn't love at all. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do, for others and ourselves, is to say no." The applause afterward was warm, but the conversations that followed were warmer. Still, women and men who'd lived through similar experiences, who'd never found words for what happened to them, who'd carried shame for allowing themselves to be used, "You found your calling," Rose commented as we gathered our materials afterward. "Look at them. They needed to hear this from someone who's walked their path." I smiled, watching the small group still deep in conversation. "I just wish I'd heard it 20 years ago." "Then be the voice you needed to hear," she replied simply. Later that afternoon, I welcomed an unexpected visitor to my condo. Amanda stood awkwardly at my threshold, a small gift bag dangling from her fingers. "May I come in?" she asked, more request than demand. The past year had changed her. The designer clothes remained, but the imperious confidence had been replaced by something more subdued. She'd moved out permanently from the house she'd shared with Travis, taking a smaller apartment and, surprisingly, a job teaching at Sophia's school. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "I just made tea." She followed me to the kitchen, glancing around at my new space, the artwork from my community college classes displayed without apology, the photographs carefully curated to represent genuine joy rather than performed perfection. "It's nice," she offered, accepting the teacup I handed her. "Cozy." "Thank you." I waited, giving her space to reach the purpose of her visit in her own time. Finally, she slid the gift bag across the counter. "I wanted to give you this. Today is... well, I realized what today is." Inside was a small, leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with a simple tree of life design. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "Open it," she urged quietly. I turned to the first page, where Amanda's handwriting filled the opening lines. "Mom, I spent a year being angry that you finally said no. It's taken therapy, distance, and painful self-reflection to understand that I should have been grateful for all the times you said yes. This journal is for your new chapter. Fill it with experiences that are for you alone, not sacrifices for anyone else. With love and, finally, respect, Amanda." My vision blurred with unexpected tears. Not because all was forgiven. We both knew better than to pretend that. But because in these simple lines lay recognition of harm done, of lessons learned, of the possibility of building something new from the ashes of what had burned. "Thank you," I managed, closing the journal carefully. Amanda twisted her wedding ring, still present despite the separation. "I've been thinking a lot about patterns, about how I grew up watching you give everything to make me happy, and somehow I learned that was love, that taking was my birthright." I nodded, unwilling to interrupt this rare moment of insight. "I don't want Sophia to learn that," she continued. "I don't want her to become what I became." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I'm trying to change. For her. For myself, too, I guess." "Change is possible at any age," I said softly. "I'm living proof of that." A small smile touched her lips. The art history professor, the workshop presenter, the community volunteer. "Sometimes I barely recognize you, Mom. Sometimes I barely recognize myself," I admitted, but in a good way. We talked for another hour, not with the easy intimacy of the past, but with a new cautious respect. There were topics we carefully avoided. Travis, the police report, the financial manipulation. Those wounds were still too raw for casual conversation. But we discussed Sophia's science project, Amanda's teaching challenges, my upcoming art exhibit at the senior center. Normal things, human things, building blocks for whatever came next. As she prepared to leave, Amanda paused by a photograph on my bookshelf, me and Sophia at the botanical gardens, both of us laughing as butterflies landed on our outstretched hands. "She adores you, you know," Amanda said quietly. "She talks about Grandma's house like it's her favorite place in the world." "The feeling is mutual," I replied. "She's an extraordinary child." "Yes, much better than she has any right to be, given her parents." The self-awareness in Amanda's voice was new, a humility I'd never heard before. After she left, I sat on my balcony with the leather journal, considering what to write on its blank pages. So much had changed in a year. I had changed, shedding decades of people-pleasing habits, learning to stand in my power, discovering new passions and purposes. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Officer Bennett's name appeared on the caller ID. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted me warmly. "I wanted to let you know personally, the Elder Services Division approved your application. The training program starts next month." "That's wonderful news," I said, genuine excitement bubbling through me. The volunteer position with the police department's elder outreach program had seemed like a long shot, a way to transform my painful experience into something meaningful for others. "You'll be perfect for this," he assured me. "Someone who's lived it, who can speak the Truth with compassion. After we disconnected, I opened the journal and finally began to write. 1 year ago today, I stood in a bank and found the courage to say no. I thought it was the end of everything. Instead, it was the beginning. That evening, Sophia and I baked cookies in my small kitchen, flour dusting our clothes as we laughed over her attempts to crack eggs one-handed. Margaret joined us for dinner, bringing her famous lasagna and stories that had Sophia giggling uncontrollably. As I looked around my table at this unconventional family we'd created, not perfect, not without complications, but authentic and loving, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The path here had been painful beyond measure, requiring me to lose what I thought was irreplaceable. But in that loss, I'd found something unexpected. Myself. Later, as Sophia prepared for bed in her lavender room, she called me in for our nightly tradition. "Grandma, tell me the bird story again," she requested, snuggling under the quilt Margaret had made her. I smiled, settling beside her. Once there was a bird who spent her whole life gathering twigs for everyone else's nests. She worked so hard that she never built one for herself. Until one day when she was very old, she realized it wasn't too late to learn to fly in a new direction. And she built the most beautiful nest of all. Sophia finished sleepily. "Yes," I agreed, kissing her forehead. "Because it was hers alone, made with wisdom and love." As she drifted toward sleep, I added the part I usually kept to myself. And she discovered that true love isn't about emptying yourself until nothing remains. It's about becoming so full of your own light that it spills over, illuminating everyone around you. Sophia's eyes fluttered open briefly. "Like you, Grandma," she murmured before sleep claimed her. I stood at the window afterward, watching the stars emerge above Denver's skyline. At 70, I had found a truth that had eluded me for decades. Dignity, once reclaimed, was worth more than any inheritance. And love without respect was not love at all. But perhaps the most profound discovery was that it's never too late to begin again, to draw boundaries, to demand respect, to fill your life with meaning that comes from within rather than validation from without. The journey wasn't over. There would be difficult days ahead, complex emotions to navigate with Amanda, boundaries to maintain with Travis, new challenges to face as I aged, but I would face them as this new version of myself, a woman who had learned, at long last, that her own worth was never negotiable. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.